The twin suns of Valora Prime painted the sky with ribbons of gold and violet. Floating high above the glittering ocean stood the Crystal Palace, the home of Princess Alethra Valen, the most admired and mysterious royal in the galaxy. Her beauty was praised across 100 star systems, but it was her mind, sharp and stubborn, that truly captured attention. From the first day she came of age, noble suitors from every empire tried to win her hand. They arrived in shining ships bringing gifts made of rare gems and glowing minerals from distant moons. Some offered fleets, others entire planets. But no matter how rich or powerful the suitor was, Alethra refused them all. The royal court began to whisper that the princess's heart was made of stone. Some claimed she was cursed. Others said no one in the galaxy was worthy of her. The emperor, her father, tried to stay patient. But with every passing year, political pressure grew heavier. One evening, as the palace lights dimmed to a soft blue, the emperor stood before her in the throne room. His voice was calm but weary. "Alethra," he said, "the time has come for you to choose. You cannot turn away every alliance. The future of Valora depends on unity." Alethra lifted her chin, her silver eyes reflecting the star-shaped crystals around them. "Father," she replied gently, "I will not marry a man who sees me as a key to his throne. I want someone who understands me, not my crown." Her father sighed. He had heard these words before, but he could not deny her courage. She was not cold-hearted, only sincere. Still, the galaxy did not run on feelings. It ran on power, treaties, and survival. News of her defiance spread quickly across the stars. On distant planets, alien nobles mocked her, calling her foolish for rejecting wealth and authority. But among the common people, her story became legend. The princess who refused all became a symbol of strength, a woman unafraid to speak her mind. Then came the year of the Great Interstellar Exhibition, a grand event hosted by the Valoran Empire, where every known civilization was invited to showcase their technology, art, and culture. It was a celebration of peace and discovery. The Emperor saw it as a chance to strengthen old alliances and, perhaps, find a suitor Alethra could not reject. For the first time, a new and lesser-known species received an invitation. Humans, from a small blue planet called Earth. They were new to interstellar travel, but their recent inventions had impressed the Galactic Council. The Emperor thought little of them, but allowed their participation to show generosity to the younger races. On the day of the exhibition, the palace plaza shimmered with energy. Alien guests filled the air with colors, sounds, and scents from hundreds of worlds. Hovercrafts drifted above while banners of light rippled like silk in the sky. Alethra stood beside her father, dressed in a gown that glowed faintly like moonlight. Her presence silenced the crowd. One by one, delegations approached. The tall reptilian kings of Dracora, the luminous scholars of Zenith, the shadowy envoys of Vor, and finally, a small group of humans in modest uniforms. Compared to the other species, they looked plain. Their clothes were simple, their equipment basic. Yet they stood straight, eyes clear and confident. Leading them was Captain Jason Holt, representative of Earth's Exploration Corps. He was tall, with calm blue eyes that carried a quiet determination. When he bowed before the Emperor and the Princess, his movements were respectful but not fearful. "Your Majesty," he said, "I bring greetings from Earth. We come not as conquerors or beggars, but as explorers seeking friendship." His voice was steady, honest. Alethra watched him closely. Most aliens spoke to her father with practiced flattery or exaggerated awe. But this human's tone was different, humble yet strong. The Emperor nodded politely, but some nobles chuckled softly behind their jeweled masks. To them, humans were primitive, still learning to travel the stars. What could they offer a civilization as advanced as Valora's? Alethra, however, found herself curious. She leaned slightly forward and asked, "Tell me, Captain Holt, why does your world seek friendship with others?" "Most races seek only advantage," Jason smiled faintly. "Because we learned that survival alone isn't enough. We've seen war, hunger, and fear, but we keep going. We believe friendship makes us stronger than conquest ever could." His words silenced the room. There was no poetry in them, no attempt to impress, only truth. Alethra felt something she hadn't in years: interest. Later, during the banquet, the princess watched from afar as Jason spoke with her father's advisors. He didn't try to dominate the room, but when he spoke, others listened. He asked questions. He listened carefully. And when he didn't understand a technology or tradition, he admitted it openly. Most ambassadors pretended to know everything. Jason was different. As the evening went on, a storm of light passed through the upper atmosphere, a harmless solar wave that painted the palace windows in dancing color. Alethra found herself walking to the observation balcony, where she unexpectedly met Jason again. He was standing alone, gazing at the twin suns sinking behind the horizon. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. He turned and smiled. "It is. But I was thinking, it must be strange to live under two suns. On Earth we only have one." Alethra looked at him with amusement. "And yet you travel among the stars. You humans are full of surprises." Jason chuckled lightly. "We've had to be. We don't live as long as most species here. Our lives are short, so we try to make every day count." There was a quiet pause. His words carried no sadness, only acceptance. Alethra felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time, someone spoke not of power or eternity, but of meaning. Before she could answer, one of her guards approached to remind her that the Emperor was waiting. Alethra nodded and turned to leave, but not before glancing back at Jason one last time. He stood still, hands behind his back, watching the light fade. There was no fear in him, no desire for favor, only wonder. That night, as she sat by her window, Alethra replayed their brief conversation. The galaxy was full of ancient, proud races, yet none had spoken with such quiet honesty. She whispered to herself, "Humans, so fragile yet so brave." The next morning the court buzzed with gossip about the exhibition. Most nobles dismissed the humans as insignificant. But Alethra said nothing. She simply asked her attendants to send her all the information available about Earth and its people. Her father noticed the change in her expression during council meetings. He couldn't tell why, but the fire in her eyes had softened slightly. In the days that followed, Jason and his team continued their stay at the palace, sharing human inventions and learning about Velaran culture. Alethra attended some sessions quietly, often from a distance, observing. For the first time in her life, the princess who had refused all suitors felt something she couldn't quite name. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was curiosity, respect, and the faint spark of something deeper. The galaxy had brought her countless kings and conquerors, yet the one who captured her attention was a simple human, humble, sincere, and unafraid to be himself. And though she didn't yet realize it, this meeting would soon change the fate of both their worlds. Morning light spilled through the glass towers of the Crystal Palace. Princess Alethra Velan sat beside a tall window overlooking the shining city of Varine, lost in thought. The memory of the human, Captain Jason Holt, had not faded from her mind. His calm voice, his honest words, his humble confidence, it all felt different from the arrogance she was used to. Most aliens she met wanted her attention because of her title. But this man hadn't tried to impress her at all. That alone made him interesting. Her attendants noticed her silence that morning. Normally, Alethra was quick to ask about new science reports or the day's diplomatic meetings. But today she seemed distracted, her eyes following the silver ships that drifted through the morning sky. Down in the courtyard, Captain Jason Holt was beginning his third day on Valora Prime. He had been invited to present a demonstration of human engineering. The Valoran scientists expected something primitive, perhaps even amusing. But Jason had prepared carefully. He stood before a large crowd in the Grand Plaza, a mix of nobles, scholars, and officials. His team set up a small structure made of flexible metal and energy panels. "This," Jason said to the audience, "is a sample of Earth's adaptive shelter. It was designed to protect people during disasters, storms, earthquakes, and radiation bursts. It can fold into a small box but expand into a safe home in less than a minute." He pressed a button. The metal pieces unfolded smoothly, transforming into a small, glowing dome. A soft gasp went through the crowd. "It's not advanced compared to your technology," he admitted, "but it has saved thousands of lives. On Earth we build not for beauty but for survival." His honesty caught everyone off guard. Most species spoke proudly of their inventions, trying to outshine each other. But this human stood before the galaxy's elite and humbly called his creation simple. From the balcony above, Alethra watched every moment. She could feel that quiet strength again. the courage to admit imperfection, the bravery to stand proud even without greatness. After the demonstration, Jason and his crew were invited to join the Emperor for lunch in the royal hall. The atmosphere was polite but distant. Some nobles whispered, making small jokes about the humans' short lifespans and lack of advanced technology. Jason heard them but pretended not to. The Emperor finally turned to him and asked, "Captain Holt, tell us, what drives your people to explore the stars when your world is still young and fragile?" Jason looked thoughtful. "Because we have always wanted to know what lies beyond the horizon, Your Majesty." Every step forward was hard. Every discovery came with loss. But we believe that reaching out to others makes the journey worth it. The Emperor studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "A noble answer," he said, though his tone held caution. After the meal, Alethra approached Jason as he stood near the great window, admiring the twin suns. She smiled politely. "Your invention was impressive," she said. "You built something simple yet meaningful." Jason turned to her with a small bow. "Thank you, Princess. We may not have great power, but we try to make the best of what we have." Alethra tilted her head, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. "You speak as though struggle is something to be proud of." Jason smiled faintly. "It is. Struggle teaches us who we are. On Earth, nothing comes easy. Maybe that's why we value peace so much, because we've seen how fragile it is." His words stayed with her long after he left. That night she found herself walking through the palace gardens, thinking of his calm eyes and steady tone. There was no fear in him, no need to prove his worth. It reminded her of a steady flame that refused to die, no matter how strong the wind blew. The next day, the Emperor's council gathered for a private meeting. Many nobles were concerned. "Your Majesty," said Lord Tren, one of the Emperor's closest advisors, "the princess spends too much time observing these humans. They are unpredictable. Their motives are unclear." "They are explorers," the Emperor said, his deep voice firm, "and I trust my daughter's judgment." But Alethra's mother, the Empress, looked worried. "Curiosity can become attachment, my love," she whispered. "We must not forget our duty to Valora." That evening, Alethra received an official message from the council, inviting her to host a cultural discussion for visiting ambassadors. It was a way to encourage her to meet new suitors again. She agreed politely, though her interest in such gatherings had long faded. When the day arrived, the grand hall shone with silver light. Music played softly as nobles and alien leaders mingled. Alethra moved gracefully among them, speaking kindly but without enthusiasm. Then, unexpectedly, she saw Jason standing at the edge of the room, speaking with a Zenithian scholar. He looked slightly out of place among the luxurious crowd, but completely at ease. When he noticed her, he bowed slightly. "Princess," he greeted. Alethra smiled. "Captain Holt, you look less formal than our nobles," he chuckled. "I never learned how to wear clothes worth more than my ship." A few nearby guests laughed lightly, surprised by his humor. Alethra found herself smiling genuinely, a rare thing for her in such events. Their conversation soon drew attention. Curious eyes turned toward the human who dared to speak casually with the princess. A few nobles whispered, displeased that a lesser being could earn her smile. After a while, one of the young Valoran princes, known for his arrogance, approached them. "Captain Holt," he said smoothly, "I heard your kind still use fossil fuels and eat plants grown in dirt. Is that true?" Jason met the prince's gaze without offense. "Yes, that's true," he said calmly. "We don't have energy crystals like yours, so we make do with what we have." The prince smirked. "How primitive." "I suppose your species has a long way to go." Jason simply smiled. "Maybe, but we'll get there, one step at a time." Alethra's eyes flashed. She could feel the prince's cruelty and Jason's quiet patience. Before she could stop herself, she said sharply, "Perhaps, Prince Loren, you could learn something from those who rise without privilege." The room fell silent. The prince bowed stiffly and left, his pride wounded. Jason blinked, unsure how to respond. "I'm sorry, Princess," he said softly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." She shook her head. "You didn't. Some people need to be reminded that greatness is not measured by birth." Their eyes met for a moment, and something passed between them, something unspoken and strong. Later that night, Jason returned to his quarters, but sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about the princess, her courage, her intelligence, her defiance even in a hall full of power. She reminded him of the kind of leaders humanity dreamed of having one day. Meanwhile, Alethra stood by her window looking at the stars. For years she had been surrounded by those who wanted her for her status. But this man, a stranger from a distant world, had treated her as an equal. She whispered softly to herself, "He doesn't see a crown. He sees a person." But as the gentle hum of the palace lights filled the night, dark whispers spread through the royal court. The nobles were not pleased. They saw the growing connection between the princess and the human as an insult to Velaran pride. One of the advisors, Lord Tren, met secretly with the Emperor's guard commander. "Keep an eye on the human," he ordered coldly. "If his influence grows, it could threaten our alliances." The Emperor must not be embarrassed. Far from the palace, Jason's ship rested in the royal dock, unaware of the attention it had drawn. And so, while two hearts from different worlds began to understand each other, shadows of jealousy and fear started to rise around them. The story of the human and the princess was no longer just curiosity. It was becoming something powerful, something that neither the court nor the stars could easily ignore. The sunless night of Valora Prime shimmered with millions of lights from the floating city. From above, the capital looked like a sea of stars resting on the planet's surface. Inside the Crystal Palace, Princess Alethra Valen sat quietly in her private chamber. The walls around her glowed with soft silver light. Yet her mind was full of questions. Questions about humanity and the strange man who represented them. Captain Jason Holt. She had met many diplomats in her life, but Jason was different. He was not born into wealth or command, yet he carried himself with quiet strength. His eyes didn't seek approval, and his words didn't hide meaning. That honesty was rare in the galaxy of politics and power. For the first time in many years, the princess couldn't focus on her duties. Her advisors noticed her distraction. Her father noticed her smiles. The court noticed everything, and they whispered. Still, Alethra continued to meet Jason during the public events of the exhibition. They spoke politely at first, but soon their talks became deeper, almost personal. They discussed their worlds, their fears, their dreams. Jason spoke about Earth, its blue oceans, green forests, and people who worked hard to survive despite endless challenges. Alethra listened closely, fascinated by how humans valued small things: hope, friendship, and love. Things her own people often forgot in their pursuit of perfection. One evening, after a long day of trade discussions, Alethra invited Jason to visit her sky garden, a private place high above the palace domes. No foreigner had ever stepped there before. It was a bold decision, but her heart told her to take the risk. When Jason arrived, escorted by 2 palace guards, he stopped in awe. The garden floated in mid-air, surrounded by transparent walls that revealed the endless sky. Trees with silver leaves glowed softly, and streams of liquid light ran through the air like floating rivers. "This place is," Jason began, unable to find the right word. "Beautiful?" Alethra smiled. "Yes, it is. My mother designed it when I was a child. It's the only place I feel free." Jason turned to her. "Free? You live in a palace that everyone in the galaxy admires." She shook her head gently. "Admiration is not freedom. Every decision I make is watched, judged, and measured. Here, at least, I can breathe." Jason looked around and then back at her. "On Earth, freedom means something different to everyone. For me, it means being able to choose what's right even when it's hard." She smiled softly. "And what is right, Captain Holt?" He paused for a moment. "Telling the truth, even when people don't want to hear it." Alethra's eyes lingered on him. She could see in his face the weight of experience. Pain, loss, and courage mixed together. It was not the face of a conqueror, but of a survivor. They walked slowly among the glowing plants, their steps echoing faintly on the crystal paths. The conversation flowed easily. Alethra told him about her world's history, how the Valorans had once fought wars over power and perfection, until they finally built peace through unity. Jason shared stories of Earth's struggles, how humans still fought but kept dreaming of better days. At one point, Jason asked quietly, "Why did you invite me here, Princess? I'm just a small voice among great leaders." Alethra hesitated, then answered honestly, "Because you speak with truth, not pride. Most who stand before me try to prove their greatness. You only prove your sincerity." Jason's expression softened. "Where I come from, sincerity is sometimes all we have." A comfortable silence followed. Above them, the twin moons crossed paths, bathing the garden in silver and blue. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood together, two beings from distant worlds, connected by curiosity and quiet respect. But outside the garden, danger was already growing. In the royal hall, Lord Tren, the Emperor's advisor, met with a group of nobles. His tone was cold. The princess grows close to the human. This cannot continue. It dishonors our empire. The Emperor will not allow this, one noble hissed. He will not if he learns the truth, Tren replied. But for now we will watch. And if the human crosses his place, we will act. The next morning, a rumor spread through the court that a foreign agent had stolen classified research from the Valoran archives. Though there was no proof, suspicion quickly fell on the humans, newcomers with unknown motives. Jason and his team were questioned, their ship searched, but nothing was found. Jason remained calm even when accused. We came to learn, not to steal, he said firmly. But many refused to believe him. When Alethra heard of the investigation, she went straight to her father. Father, you know they wouldn't do this. Captain Holt has shown nothing but respect. The Emperor frowned. My daughter, I admire your compassion, but we must protect our empire. If he is innocent, the truth will clear him. If not... Please, she interrupted. Let me speak with him myself. The Emperor hesitated, then nodded. You have until sunrise. But remember, Alethra, the court already watches your every move. That night she met Jason again, this time in secret, inside the Sky Garden. The stars were bright, but her face was clouded with worry. They think you took something, she said quietly. They're wrong, I know that. But they need a reason to believe. Jason sighed. I expected this. On Earth, new alliances always come with fear. She looked at him sadly. Fear has destroyed many good things on this world. He nodded. Then maybe it's time someone stood against it. Before she could reply, a sudden sound broke the quiet, a sharp pulse of energy from above. A glowing dart shot through the air, aimed directly at her. Jason reacted instantly, pushing Alethra aside. The dart struck a nearby crystal wall, exploding in a flash of light. Guards rushed in as alarms rang. The attacker vanished into the shadows. When the smoke cleared, Jason stood in front of the princess, shielding her with his body. His uniform was scorched at the shoulder, but he was alive. Are you hurt? He asked, ignoring his own injury. Alethra shook her head, wide-eyed. No, you saved me. The guards surrounded them, scanning the area. Moments later, the Emperor himself arrived, furious and alarmed. When he saw Jason standing protectively near his daughter, his expression hardened. What happened here? The Emperor demanded. Jason saluted respectfully. An assassin, Your Majesty? I reacted as fast as I could. The Emperor studied him, then looked at the burned crystal where the dart had struck. You risked your life for her. Jason met his gaze. Anyone would have done the same. Not everyone, the Emperor said quietly. That night, security was doubled, and the investigation deepened. The attacker was never found. Some said it was a rebel from a rival faction. Others whispered it was a message from those who disapproved of Alethra's closeness to the human. In the days that followed, rumors changed. The whispers that once mocked Jason now spoke of his bravery. The princess's guards began to show him quiet respect. Even the Emperor's tone softened, but Alethra's heart carried more than gratitude. When she looked at Jason now, she saw more than a friend. She saw the man who had risked everything for her without hesitation. They met again in the garden days later, though the guards protested. Alethra smiled gently at Jason. You saved my life, she said. But you've also made it more complicated. Jason laughed softly. I'm sorry for that, princess. Trouble seems to follow humans wherever we go. She stepped closer, her eyes glowing like soft starlight. And yet, I am glad you came. The two stood there beneath the silver leaves, the air filled with quiet warmth. Around them, the stars watched silently, as if aware that something rare had begun. Something fragile, dangerous but real. Far away, in the shadowed halls of the palace, Lord Tren watched a security recording of the incident. His eyes narrowed. He saved her once, he muttered, but next time, we'll see how far his courage goes. As the recording faded, the scene in the Sky Garden remained frozen on the screen. A princess and a human, standing together under alien stars, united not by duty or blood, but by something far stronger. Days turned into weeks after the attack in the Sky Garden. The palace still shimmered with its usual light, but the air around it carried a sense of unease. The attempted assassination had shaken everyone. No one knew who the attacker was or what their goal had been, but whispers filled the corridors like cold wind. Some said the attack was meant to kill the princess. Others whispered that it had been planned to test the humans' loyalty. Whatever the truth was, one thing had changed forever. Captain Jason Holt was no longer seen as just a visitor. He had become the human who saved Princess Alethra Valen's life. The people began to speak his name with quiet respect. The guards who once doubted him now saluted him with genuine honor. Even the Emperor, who once saw him as a guest, began to see him as something more, a brave soul with true courage. But not everyone was pleased. In the shadows of the court, Lord Tren watched every move Jason made. The old advisor's pride couldn't accept that an outsider, a human from a young planet, could become a hero in their empire. He whispered to the Emperor's council, "If we allow this bond between the princess and the human to grow, it will bring shame to our bloodline. He must be tested. He must prove that he is worthy, or he must leave." The Emperor resisted at first, but the pressure from the nobles was strong. They feared the people's admiration for Jason, and they feared the possibility that Alethra's heart was no longer her own. Finally, after many long discussions, the Emperor agreed to hold a traditional test, a challenge known as the Trial of Worth. It was an ancient ceremony designed to test courage, intelligence, and purity of heart. No outsider had ever taken it before. When the decision was announced, the court buzzed with excitement. Some were certain the human would refuse. Others hoped he would fail and leave in shame. But when the Emperor told Jason about the trial, the human only nodded. "I will do it," Jason said calmly. The Emperor looked at him surprised. "You do not have to accept. It is dangerous. Many have failed." Jason met his eyes. "Your Majesty, if my actions have caused doubt, then I will face this test, not to prove my strength, but to prove my respect for your daughter and your people." Alethra, standing beside her father, looked at him in shock. "Jason, you don't need to do this." "They're only trying to make you," he interrupted gently. "Sometimes the only way to silence fear is to face it. Don't worry, Princess. I'll be fine." But deep inside she felt a quiet fear growing. The day of the trial, the crystal maze, where the trial would take place, stood far beyond the capital, a vast labyrinth of living crystal that changed shape with thought and emotion. It was said to test not strength of body, but strength of spirit. The walls glowed with light that responded to fear, courage, and truth. Only one rule guided the trial. Those who lie to themselves will never find the exit. Thousands gathered to watch from floating platforms above the maze. The Emperor sat with his council, his face calm but tense. Alethra stood behind him, her heart pounding. Jason stood at the entrance wearing a simple suit made for protection, not battle. Before stepping inside, he looked up toward the royal balcony. His eyes met Alethra's. She nodded once, silently promising her faith in him. Then he entered. The doors closed behind him and the maze came alive. The walls pulsed with color, shifting and reshaping. Jason walked slowly, alert but calm. His footsteps echoed in the glowing halls. The first test came quickly. A voice filled the air, soft, echoing, and familiar. "Jason Holt," it said. "Why do you walk this path? Is it for honor, or for her heart?" Jason stopped. The walls around him reflected his image 1,000 times. "For truth," he answered. "Because I want to show them that a man's worth is not measured by where he comes from." The light dimmed, then brightened again, allowing him to continue. He passed through a narrow tunnel that opened into a wide chamber. Suddenly, shapes formed from the crystal, a vision of his past. He saw himself back on Earth, standing in a war-torn city trying to save his fellow soldiers. He heard the screams, the thunder, the fear. The maze was testing his mind. Jason closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "That was then. I survived not to fight again, but to build something better." The vision faded. Hours passed. Each new passage brought a different challenge, illusions of failure, whispers of doubt, and reflections of guilt. The maze was alive, feeding on his thoughts. But Jason refused to give in. Every time he stumbled, he remembered the look in Alethra's eyes, the belief that he could make a difference. Outside, the nobles began to grow restless. The trial had lasted longer than anyone expected. Some murmured that the human had perished, but Alethra refused to move from her place. She stood at the balcony's edge, her hands tightly clasped, eyes locked on the glowing maze. Inside, Jason reached the final chamber. It was quiet, too quiet. A soft mist filled the air and a figure appeared before him, made entirely of crystal light. It was his own reflection, but darker, colder. The reflection spoke. "You think you can win her heart? You, a mortal human from a world of weakness? What can you give her that the stars cannot?" Jason stared at it calmly. "I can give her what no crown or galaxy can offer. Truth, loyalty, and choice." The reflection sneered. "And what if your truth is not enough?" Jason smiled faintly. "Then I'll still stand by it, because truth is all a man should ever stand on." At those words, the maze shuddered. The walls around him began to glow white, so bright that he had to shield his eyes. Then everything went silent. When the light faded, Jason found himself standing at the exit, the golden gates of the maze opening before him. The crowd gasped as he stepped out, tired, bruised, but alive. The Emperor rose from his seat. Alethra rushed forward, tears glimmering in her eyes. The people watched in silence as the Emperor approached the human who had done what no outsider had ever done before. "You have passed the trial," the Emperor said, his voice deep with emotion. "You faced your fears and your truth with honor. Valora recognizes your courage." Jason bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what I felt was right." Alethra stepped forward, unable to hide her smile. "You did more than right, Jason. You did what others only dreamed of." The crowd began to cheer. The sound spread like a wave across the sky platforms. For the first time in history, a human was honored by the Valoran Empire. Not as a guest, not as a lesser being, but as an equal. But even as celebration filled the air, Lord Tren's face darkened. He whispered to another noble beside him, "He may have survived, but this is not the end. The Emperor may honor him, but the Council will never accept it. We will find another way." That night, as fireworks painted the skies in gold and blue, Alethra met Jason in the sky garden once more, the stars reflected in the streams of light as they stood together. "You risked everything," she said softly. "Why?" Jason smiled. "Because some things are worth risking for. You believed in me when no one else did. I wanted to prove you right." Alethra looked at him for a long moment. "You don't need to prove anything anymore." "Not to them. Not to me." The twin moons shone above them, and the night felt still and eternal. They stood side by side, two souls from different worlds bound by something no trial could measure. But far below, in the dark halls of the palace, a shadow moved. Lord Tren's plans were not yet over. The court might have cheered the human today, but tomorrow they would test not his courage, but his heart. And neither Jason nor Alethra knew that the greatest challenge of all was yet to come. The first light of Valora Prime's twin suns sparkled on the crystal towers of the palace. Princess Alethra Valen stood at the balcony, her silver eyes reflecting the warm glow of morning. It had been weeks since Captain Jason Holt passed the trial of worth, yet the court and palace still buzzed with whispers. Many admired him, others feared his influence, and a few remained openly hostile. But Alethra barely noticed them. Her thoughts were on Jason, on his courage, his honesty, and the quiet strength that had captured her heart. She remembered the day he saved her in the Sky Garden. She remembered the moments in the maze when fear and doubt had threatened him, but he never gave up. He was different from any being she had ever known. Humans were fragile compared to Valorans, but their spirit was unbreakable. That spirit had drawn her in and now held her in ways no crown or duty ever could. Preparing to part, Jason stood outside the palace hangar, looking at his sleek ship resting against the glowing city. The Valoran Council had offered him a permanent position in their exploration corps, but he had other duties. Earth needed him too. His time on Valora Prime had been short but transformative. Alethra joined him quietly. "You don't have to go," she said softly. Jason shook his head. "I wish I could stay, Princess. But Earth calls me home. My people need me." Her silver eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "And my people need me. If I were to follow my heart, I would follow you, but the throne, my duty, cannot leave my people unprotected." He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Then we both honor our responsibilities. That doesn't mean we forget each other." She nodded, smiling faintly. "It won't be easy, Jason. Distance can be cruel." He squeezed her hand. "True, but love is stronger than distance, and humans are persistent." They stood in silence for a moment, letting the light of the twin suns wash over them. Around them, the palace stirred with the day's activities. But in that small moment it felt as if the universe itself had paused, a promise made before he departed. Alithra led Jason to a quiet rooftop garden, one of the palace's hidden sanctuaries. She turned to him, her gaze steady. "Promise me something," she said. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Anything." "Promise me that no matter how far apart we are, you will always speak the truth, follow your heart, and never let fear stop you from doing what is right." Jason smiled. "I promise, Princess." She reached up and placed a hand on his cheek. "And promise me that you will return one day." Jason hesitated, then nodded. "I promise. I will return." They stood together, feeling the warmth of the suns and the quiet of the gardens. It was a farewell, yet it was also a beginning, a vow between two hearts across the stars. Farewell, across the stars. When the ship finally lifted off the ground, Alithra watched from the balcony, her hair glowing in the morning light. Jason waved once, a small gesture that carried the weight of all they had shared. As he disappeared into the sky, she whispered, "Go, Jason Holt. Make the stars remember humanity." Down below, the court buzzed with speculation. Many still could not understand why the princess admired a human so deeply. But Alithra paid them no mind. She had seen what humans could be, their courage, their kindness, and their determination. Jason's heart was proof of that. The Emperor joined her on the balcony. "Your daughter's heart is strong," he said quietly. "Perhaps stronger than I realized." Alithra looked at him, a small smile touching her lips. "Strength isn't always measured by power or lineage, Father. Sometimes it is measured by the heart." The Emperor nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. For the first time, he saw that the princess's choice might not weaken Valora Prime, but strengthen it in ways no one had imagined. Humanity honored word of Jason's actions spread quickly through the galaxy. Humans, once considered a minor species, were now seen as brave, honest, and full of spirit. Their ability to act with courage and compassion inspired others. In the weeks that followed, Valora Prime held a grand celebration, not just for the princess, but for the courage of one human who had risked everything for honor and truth. Statues were erected not as monuments of conquest, but as symbols of bravery, loyalty, and unity. Alithra attended the ceremony quietly, standing at the front of the crowd. She thought of Jason, of his words, of his unwavering spirit. Her heart swelled with pride and love, not for his rank nor his strength, but for who he was. A love that transcends worlds. Though Jason had returned to Earth, letters and messages passed between them through advanced interstellar communication. They shared stories, discoveries, and dreams. Every message reminded them that love could cross even the greatest distances, and that hearts bound by respect and trust were stronger than the forces of empire or time. One evening, Alithra stood in the sky garden once more, her eyes on the stars. She could almost imagine Jason standing beside her, looking up at the same sky from another world. "He may be mortal," she whispered, "but his heart will echo forever in mine." And in that moment, she understood the truth of her own heart. Love was not measured by crowns or kingdoms, but by courage, honesty, and the choice to see another as equal. Across the stars, Jason looked at the sky from his ship, thinking of Valora Prime and the princess who had changed his life. "She taught me that even in a galaxy full of power, the heart can lead the way," he thought. Though their worlds were far apart, their bond remained unbroken. And as humanity's starship sailed among the distant suns, Alithra knew that one day he would return, not as a visitor, but as someone who had earned his place beside her, not by titles or wealth, but by the courage of his heart. The beginning of a new era. The story of the human and the princess became a legend across Valora Prime and beyond. It inspired not only hope but understanding that greatness is not defined by birth or power, but by deeds, courage, and kindness. Alithra ruled wisely. With a renewed sense of hope and connection to the galaxy, Jason's journey back to Earth reminded everyone that humanity, though young, could leave a mark across the stars. And though distance separated them, one truth remained clear. Love could cross any galaxy. Courage could overcome any fear. And a heart once given freely could inspire not only one person but a whole world. As the twin suns set over Valora Prime, Alithra looked to the horizon and whispered, I will wait for you, Jason Holt, until the stars bring you home. Far beyond the light of Valora Prime, a small blue ship sailed through the endless void, carrying a human whose heart had been stolen, and whose love would return again. One day, to the princess who had always believed in him. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers, but one thing was certain. Human courage and love could shine brighter than any star.